Hello, welcome to another episode of the NK Active podcast. Really excited that this month we haven't got one guest, we've got two guests. We got Ruth, who is actually a patient at NK Active, and then Nick Anderson from Running With Us, who's, if you're a runner, you've most probably heard of Nick because he's quite a renowned running coach in this country. So, Ruth, just tell us a bit about yourself as a runner and your running journey.
Sure. So yeah, I'm 37 years old, and I really only got into running in my late 20s, early 30s. I wasn't very active when I was younger at all. And I started doing like a bit on the treadmill, and then kind of set myself little goals like, oh, I'll run 5K, I'll do 10K. And then, eventually I did the Great South Run, I think in 2014. And I was all right at that. And I hadn't like properly trained. I didn't run with a watch or anything. So after that, I thought, yeah, I'll have a bit more of a go at running. And I ran for a couple of years, I think, with a family friend who gave me some advice. And it soon kind of took over my personality a bit, and people kind of got to know me as Ruth who runs. And yeah, I'd say it kind of became part of my identity. And then a couple of years ago, probably 2019, I hurt my hamstring, probably a hamstring avulsion, possibly. And I stopped running because, firstly, I tried to run more, and that didn't help at all. And I found it quite difficult to access like good advice, good physio. I wasn't part of like a running community. None of my friends were into running. So I kind of just thought, oh, I'll sort of treat it myself, which wasn't very effective. And then we had lockdown. And it was really hard to get and see a physio or anything. So whereas everyone else took up running in lockdown, I wasn't able to run at all or do much else, which I found really difficult based on a physical and a sort of mental health perspective. And then towards the end of lockdown, I got in touch with a different physio who was quite supportive, and helped me sort of build back up, sort of strengthen that area and very gradually return to running. Reflecting on how I'd done myself more injury by just going off and trying to hammer it and muscle through, I thought actually some structured coaching would be helpful for me to help me sort of build back. And my goal at that point was to just be as good as I was before, which was kind of doing some local races, placing into local races and just really enjoying it. Yep. And feeling like it was something I was good at. I actually knew Nick of a long time ago, when he used to work. My dad was a groundsman, looking after sports pitches. So I remembered, oh yeah, Nick, he's local. I'd seen him out running, and he did running coaching. So I dropped him a line, and Nick got back to me and was like, "Oh, that's not Ruth Churchill, Stuart's daughter." I was like, "Oh yeah, it is." So we sort of started working together the beginning of last year to build up my running, and yeah, we were having a very gradual build, and then probably going for a three months or so. And yeah, I was just out running one day, just a 30-minute easy run, and a few K into it, I just felt this stabbing pain right through the middle of my foot. I thought, this is not good at all. I couldn't, really walk on it. And yeah, turns out I had a stress fracture in my foot. So yeah, in comes completely different experience from before, whereas, I didn't know how to access support. Then I had Nick Anderson to turn to, who put me in touch with you, and K Active, and that's how I'm here.
But at least you couldn't forget either of our names, because if you forget
Yeah.
one, you forget both, don't you? So yeah, no. So thank you very much for it, and we'll come back on to the injury and the journey you've been on since that, because you've now fully recovered and you're back running really, really well. But Nick, sort of tell us a bit about your background of running, and then the coaching side of things, and who you work with, because you work with a lot of big companies, a lot of big people helping people. So just give the listener a bit of a flavor, really.
Okay. Well, good evening or afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me on here. I try and summarize this because I'm old and I don't want this to be too long. But I guess, long story short, at the age of 8 or 9, which gives away my age straight away. So we're looking here at the late 70s and 1980. There was co-Cram and Ovett running loads successfully, and they used to stop the 9 o'clock news for them trying to do another world record in the 1500 or the mile, wherever it was, somewhere. And that hooked me. So as much as I loved other sports and played football and cricket, running suddenly became something I wanted to do. Turned out was reasonably good at it. It was okay. And did loads at school, and eventually sort of became a junior international, and then a lower key senior international, and really ran loads and loads at club and sort of national level and so on here in the UK, and loved it. Fell into coaching in my mid-20s. Actually really enjoyed that and found it was something I really wanted to do, and it became something then that I'd made up my mind. This was it for me. I'd found the thing I really wanted to do, alongside still running myself as well. Spent a bit of time at Winchester College as coach and teaching PE there, so that's how I knew Ruth's father and everybody that was there. And over the years, then I've ended up being very fortunate to be, I guess, at stages head coach for 5K, 10K, cross country, things like that in the UK. National marathon coach and so on. And 12, 14 years ago, created this company, Running with Us, where we try to every day, well, we're working with runners all the time, and we're trying to basically work with you so that you will be a better runner tomorrow than you are today. That's a simple strategy. It doesn't matter whether you want to be in the World Championships, Commonwealth Games, Europeans that have just been on TV and have been great this summer, or whether you're very new to it all and you're running for one of our charity partners and so on. That's fantastic. We just want you to enjoy your running, but better than that, if we can, get you a little bit faster or understanding it more. So no 2 days are the same. And really, to be honest with you, whether it's direct coaching, it's writing training plans, it's articles, it's this kind of work that we're doing now, training camps in the UK or abroad, looking after everyone on training days here in the UK or whatever it is for all of our partners. We're busy doing that kind of stuff. So it's fantastic. I'm very lucky, really. It's a nice thing to do in your
and
time.
have your international training camp started up again?
Yeah, they have actually. It's very kind. I've been to Portugal a couple of times actually this summer with athletes because of trying to get them acclimatized for big things that are going on this year, although ironically it's been warmer here than it has where we went, but that's been the nature of this year. And we have in actually 2 weeks time, beginning of September, got the first of our Portugal camps happening again for 10 days, which is really exciting. Ruth can't make it this time, but maybe another time. And
next March.
Next March will be the one that we do the next one of those. And I'm backwards and forwards to Malta and things like that with a club I look after out there. So there's lots going on, and actually things opening up in the world, getting back to a degree of more normality has been fantastic. It's just nice to do it all again.
No, it is. And have you become busier during the pandemic? Because running was one of those sports that you could actually still do during the pandemic.
Do you know what I think I can remember the speech that Boris did on us going into lockdown and sitting there thinking, oh my word, what's going to happen? And I think we're all nervous and worried about it, and for a lot of industries it's been really, really difficult. I've been very fortunate because people have always been able to still run, but admittedly events disappeared for a while, so that was the hard thing. It's always been keeping people going, whether it's been then setting goals or time trials, and then when things opened up a bit, trying to find races and doing stuff. That was good. Our charity partners had to be far more creative with us, and we learned how to do things like Zoom and everything else, and communicate in different ways, which has been really good. So if I'm really honest, I'm very fortunate. The pandemic, from running terms, I mean, there's more people running now. We're meeting loads of people that have got into it through lockdown, which is really lovely. But also, we've learned to do things in a better way. We have, anyway, certainly from a coaching point of view, and reach more people in other ways. So it's not been a bad period for us in that sense. We've been very fortunate. It's been nice to help so many people.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it is, you're hearing that park runs are getting busier and busier, which is absolutely fabulous, because any sort of physical activity is just, great for your health, great for your mental health, well-being, everything. It's just good to get out there, try and, dare I say it, I'm an ex-100 meter runner, so I never thought I'd ever run in the distance, but I sort of got roped into running Winchester half marathon in a few weeks' time. And that's going to be interesting because I got my first hockey league match on the Saturday, then I got to run a half marathon on the Sunday. So it's going to see my training schedule.
I think the more interesting thing would be the hills in the Winchester half marathon, but good luck with that.
Yeah,
enjoy it. You'll have a great time.
It has been, I had a week in Cornwall, and where we were in Cornwall, we were about 100 meters above sea level at the top. And then it is literally, I could go for a 10K run, and it is literally, I'd run down 10 degrees and then run back up 10 degrees for 10K. So luckily I've managed to get some hill work in and whatnot. And I live where I live, there's a few hills. I've been looking at the elevation maps for the Winchester halves and making sure that I've been getting appropriate hill training into my running. So the last thing I want is help people get back to running and then pick up an injury myself. So it's sort of talking of injuries, Ruth. So obviously you had that metatarsal stress fracture.
Yeah.
And sort of, how did it feel when you realised what went through your mind when you found out about that injury?
Well, first I was kind of slightly confused as to how it had happened, because we were taking stuff really slowly, going back to running, but also at the same time, weirdly, though I didn't expect it to my foot, I thought it might be sort of my hip hamstring area kind of flaring up again. I felt like something wasn't quite right beforehand, so I wasn't that surprised in a way on reflection that some injury had occurred. Obviously when I just did it, and for the week after, as more than that, as my husband can attest, I was really a nightmare to live with. As I sort of realized that I just started out on what I thought would be my build back, and that sort of plan had then gone out the window, and I'd just been injured for a really long time, so I was, oh, here we go again. Those were my immediate thoughts. But yeah, I mean, sort of after the initial kind of shock of it, and obviously with Nick's support, it was more kind of, okay, what can we do next? And that's more of the approach that I say adopted through the rehab, is there's always, as opposed to feeling helpless as things happened to me and now I can't do what I want, there's always some positive action that can be taken. I've already got kind of Nick Anderson's great support. It was okay, who can I bring on board to help me, support me through rehabbing my foot now? There's always something I can do. So I was sort of channeling my energy into doing that, and the cross training element to sort of preserve my fitness. So a bit of a emotional swing, I suppose.
Oh, it always is. When I ruptured my ankle ligaments, I swear my wife would have happily divorced me. I was just a nightmare. And it's regardless if you run or don't run, as long as you do any activity, if you can't do it, you're just like, you feel like something's been taken away from you. And that's just human nature. Everyone goes through that almost that anger, and then they get upset, and then they realize, actually, no, now let's just do something about it. So obviously you came to see us, and we helped sort of put some structured programs together for you. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this chat today was actually is to highlight to people that it's my role, and Nick's role also is there to help guide you through it. But you're the one who actually has to physically go away and do the work yourself. And you've sort of definitely been that A-star student, as it were, who literally goes away and does everything to the letter, to the T, and you've been seeing the results. So how does it feel sort of having that structured rehab process in place?
It's exactly how I like to operate. Like at school, I was that like A-star student. I would just go and do my homework always like to the best of my ability, and I take like the same approach, I guess, with my rehab plan or my sort of training plan from Nick, in that I like the certainty of it. I don't have to think. For example, when I go to the gym, I've got my NK active plan. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I don't have to, especially as opposed to running, kind of variations on different speeds, etc. But in the gym, there's loads of weights, loads of different machines. It's easy to spend an hour and think, how have I really applied myself in that time? You've got work and other things to do. So having that focused plan where I do a set amount of exercises, I know it's going to take me this amount of time, and it's something. Also, I'm kind of person that likes a pat on the back like every so often, so I can like monitor my progress. I can increase the weights every week, every other week, a small amount, and then like reflect back and go, actually I can not only like see the difference on paper, I can physically feel the difference in my body. As I said, when I had the injury, I felt like I wasn't running quite right, and that was one of the things that we kind of discovered when I came for my consultation at NK Active, and we did all the strength tests. I felt that the side where I had the hamstring injury was weak. In fact, I could feel that in my body, how I moved. I felt a difference. I could see a difference. I could see my belly button wasn't in the middle. And to have that confirmed, there is a weakness there, and then to target that with structured exercises, lots of single leg stuff, whereby I kind of I can feel that balance there, that equilibrium, and that has translated into me feeling comfortable and flowing when I'm running. So yeah, it's been a real turning point for me, I think.
Now, it has been good for you to get some structure, because you had your structure with Nick, and then to combine our work in there as well. And sort of now, how's it been with regards to then returning to running, and how did that feel compared to pre-injury, after you sort of spent a good number of months really applying a structured approach to things?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was like a gradual build up. And I think I said when I started working with Nick, my goal was to run. I was like, I just want to run like I did before. But now I don't feel like that's a goal at all, because I'm a completely different runner as how I was before. I've already, exceeded, anything I was doing before, in terms of like pace. And one of my goals that in all my time running before, I was like, I just want to run a sub 20-minute 5K. And then, I just did it on like the first attempt. And so I'm much stronger, much faster, and it's kind of building back that confidence now with Nick to have confidence in the strength of my foot but also like my running abilities. So at the moment, my other kind of key goal when I started working with Nick was to I always wanted to run a marathon. I'd run half before. I'd won some halves, some off-road halves, and placed in some road halves. I was like, I want to run a marathon, and now I'm working towards running a marathon. So obviously the strength work has to kind of adapt as we put on the load and in terms of the running.
Yeah,
and so working with you help that kind of sort of flex that.
And this is one of not the good things about being injured, but it gives us time where you can really hit that strength work and not worried about if you got tired legs because you're not out running. But as soon as you then started getting into training for marathon, we then had to then drop some of the strength sessions and switch things around, because the last thing you want is training on tired legs. But the interesting thing with you is that where you've applied yourself so much, you're at a point now what you can do that's really easy to maintenance work is just you can still lift big weights on a regular basis, and actually it doesn't have an impact because you've got that good solid foundation in place now. And that's what's also been really helpful, I think, for you, is sort of having that rehab process and then coming back to see us on that maintenance program of just switching things around depending on where you are in your training. And then me and Nick working together say, well, actually, like, this is where training block A is, we're running, this is what you're doing. Okay, now let's switch the strength up to then make sure they complement each other. Because then what you will then find is then as soon as running season dies down, you can then pick the strength work back up and then look at pushing further, even further forward. So whilst we're briefly then talking about sort of different types of training and whatnot, Nick, you've got a vast amount of experience in taking people through 10K, 5K marathons, half marathons, and half marathons and marathons are becoming really popular. We've got London coming up, we've got the Winchester, there's another running event in the New Forest, you got Southampton half marathon, that's now big events. There's almost like, if you want to, you could most probably run a marathon or half marathon every weekend of the year now, almost, if you wanted to. There's so many around. So what are your tips for helping someone who hasn't done it before? They may have done a 5K or 10K and they're like, well, actually, I want to go this bigger distance, but I've got no idea how to go about this. What would your tips be?
First of all, be patient. So patience, planning, and progression is kind of the 3 Ps that I always stand by. So if I'm doing a presentation, talking to runners, patience, because it takes, to be honest, years to grow your physiology, but we all want it tomorrow. So you have got to just layer it on and do things. Periodization. I always say to people, think about the mountain climber going to Everest. You don't just arrive at Everest base camp and go straight up the top of the mountain. You spend time at base camp acclimatizing, getting fitter, doing the basics, getting stronger, and then you go up a couple of camps, and then you come back down, and then you go up a bit more and you come back down. And that's really your training plan, or the cycles of training. So the patient side of it and planning that is important. Have a general direction of travel, because when you first start, you're all going to improve, whether it's walk, jogging round the block and doing that walk run process, you're going to improve. Whether it's just going out and running a few times a week, you're going to improve because you're doing more than you used to. But there comes a point where you've got to put the right ingredients in, start to work out who you are a little bit. Do you respond to this? Do you respond to that? And that's where the planning comes in. That's where it's a minefield, because there's millions of training plans out there. None of them are necessarily bad, but which one do you choose? And this is where then the art of personalizing it can come in, because you get to know who you're working with and what the parameters are. And then the final thing is it's got to progress. So you've got to build things over time so that you can summit the mountain, but you can do it in a way that's healthy. I think, just rewinding very slightly, Ruth had been working with me for a few months and then she gets this injury. So I'm old enough and, grumpy enough to know that these things happen. What had really happened there was that we were layering things on. I think we were being sensible because we were only running a few times a week, but we were doing lots of cross training. Some of it, the cross training wasn't targeted enough. And I'm also working with someone for the first time. So you don't quite know where the strengths and weaknesses necessarily are. And it would be lovely to be able to MOT someone right at the very beginning sometime and really understand that. And of course, what the injury has done is it's forced Ruth to go back, because a warning light came on with me straight away that if we're only running 3 times a week, which is great, by the way, because you can achieve so much on 3 times a week, but you're running 3 times a week and you get this kind of injury, there's some other things we need to look at. So biomechanics was an obvious thing to assess. We might have wanted to look a little bit at nutrition side of things, which we're happy about. We might as well want to look at the strength and conditioning side, which goes alongside the biomechanics. And when you start to layer all of that on, you can build a new model, a stronger model that can cope then with the journey. So now we've really gone back to layering things on and have now gone further than we could have ever dreamed before. But it's actually because we've got a stronger human being to hang it off. Yeah. And structurally, we're robust now. And if you've got a robust runner, then 2 wonderful things can happen. The first thing is consistent. So consistency is key, because if you get someone consistently training well for weeks and then months, you'll get the results and great things will happen. And the other thing is then, and this is a credit to Ruth, but to be honest with you, this is what good runners have to have. You have to have desire, because you are going to have problems. Things are going to happen that aren't going to be what you wanted or planned. And good runners, good athletes find a way around it. They will go and spend time doing things they sometimes don't want to do or never thought they'd have to do to actually take the next step forward. And that's really what has happened here, if I'm honest. So,
and that's exactly the same when we have people go through an injury process. It's almost like injuries are inevitable. They are going to happen. Sometimes you can explain them, sometimes you can't. It's just part and parcel of living an active life. But it's having that structured approach is really helpful, but also it helps create that bit of resilience, because I believe the greatest power in anything is if you've had a setback in something and you've recovered from it, you then know that actually I can recover from it. I can come back stronger. So actually, if something happens again, you've already got that in the back of your mind saying, no, I can recover from this. And straight off, your mindset's in a different place. And I also want to touch on something else you said there, Nick, was about, yes, we can help look after the mechanics, we can help look after the strength, but then you've also got yourself helping with the running and then separate nutrition support. So then you then start to go, actually, running isn't as simple as putting your shoes on and just going out for it. If you want to do it consistently and do it well, you need to look at everything. And I sort of say, I play hockey as well. Or if you play tennis or anything like that, you wouldn't just go out and just pick up a hockey stick or a tennis racket and go on the court. You'd start doing, okay, you maybe get a bit of coaching, a bit of training and whatnot. But because running is so literally easy, just put on a set of shoes and off you go. I think people sometimes forget about the aspects that we see. Sorry.
No, I agree. And I think the simple process of going for a run is easy, but progressing is involving physiology, it's psychology. There's a load of things that come together and you've got to build it. And you know, my dad always says to me, you do the easiest job in the world because you just teach people to put one foot in front of the other. And I say, well, actually, if you sort of look at what we do here, then there's all these things that come off it. There's probably a checklist of 20 to 40 things that any, I say, competent runner has either had to tick off or change to get to where they've eventually got to, because there's so many little things that will unravel the whole journey just on their own. They will unravel the whole thing unless you've found a way to deal with them, or actually you're robust enough already. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing you find is when someone achieves their goal, like, well, I want to achieve X, but then once they achieve X, they say, well, actually, no, I want to achieve X. Now can we push to Y? Because I want to see actually how far can I take that? And it is that everything it just comes back to that consistency word. If you want to do that, you just need to be consistent with what you do on a regular basis, and doing that and having the right things in place, I do believe will help you be a better runner, be a better athlete, and keep you going. So then overall, Ruth, starting to sort of bring things to a close now, as it were, is your overall experience of where you were, say, when you first started your running journey to where you are now. What advice would you have for your younger self, as it were?
Certainly, like you said, be patient and seek out support from people who have knowledge that can help you kind of apply that kind of desire, energy in a constructive way. And I would say that kind of support with being, I mean, I used to run before and I didn't really do that much strength training, which probably played into my initial injury. Strength training has been really important, and the other learning, we touched on it, there was nutrition as well, has been hugely important to me, because you know I was definitely guilty of underfueling before. If I want to do all these things, like I want to build my strength, I want to run further, faster, like then I need to eat appropriately and be consistent in my fueling. And I think that kind of triangle of the strength, the structured running plan, eating well and recovering is helping me go forward. Every time I feel like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to do my foot exercises with the band, or thinking about like nutrition, I'm like, well, I want to do this is a goal I want to get to, so these are things I've got to do, and I'm seeing the results, and I'm moving forward, and I'm further than I ever was before. So those are the things I kind of remind myself.
Yeah, no, and just keep pushing forward. You'll keep progressing. You're doing amazing things at the moment. Nick, is there anything else you want to add?
Well, just on the patience thing, I always try and say to people, look at one or two of the greats out there and then imagine their journey, because you only see the moment when they're at their best. Sometimes you don't realize the big story, what happened. The tip of the iceberg is what you see. But if you look at someone like Paula Radcliffe, her first national cross country that she did as I think it might have been an under 15 athlete. I think she was 199th. Okay. Within 3-4 years, she was world junior cross country champion. A number of years later, she's world senior cross country champion. And I think we all know the rest of the story. And eventually she's set world records for the marathon that were untouchable for years and years without the super shoes. And that journey, I think it was once a headline in the newspapers, which was very unfair about her after she won the New York marathon, and it was, £250,000 just for running 26 miles or something like that. What it really was £250,000 for 20 odd years of absolute everyday being dedicated and focused and doing all of the right things. And that's what gets you there. So wherever you are today, be patient and layer this on. If you want to run a better 5K or do your first marathon, it's all achievable, but it needs to be done in a structured, targeted way. Be strong, eat well, and allow your body, therefore, to recover appropriately. And good athletes are fidgets, all right? They really are, because what good athletes do is they sit on the floor when the TV's on and they do their rehab exercises, or they are doing the little bits of foam rolling, or they're doing the things that they need to do to prevent something from going wrong. If you sit around, you won't go anywhere. Be busy.
Yep, I love that. Love that bit of advice. And finally, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how's the best way to do it?
Well, that's very kind. You can see behind me, runningwithus.com. So you can either get hold of us on the social media that's connected to Running With Us. It's all out there at Running With Us and so on, or info@runningwithus.com. And if you want to, find out a bit more about your own training and journey, or just join in with some of the things we do, we'd love to see you and chat with you. But also, if you need support in terms of strength or biomechanics and so on, we're working with Nick already. So there we are. It's a good setup.
Yeah, no, it is. And Ruth's, I think, a lovely example of when people work together, what can you achieve when you're working with one common goal. So I think that brings us up to the half-hour mark. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you both for taking times out of your diary to come and chat on the NK Active podcast. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I will put the links to everything to do with Running With Us in the comments later. Please do subscribe to the podcast, and we shall see you next month. See you later. Bye.